Hi, I'm Dan from Endless Recording Studios, and today we're talking about DI boxes. What a DI box is, why you want to use it, and how to use it. So first off, DI just stands for direct injection. It is a way of directly injecting a signal into the board where you normally couldn't put it in there. Most old boards only had XLR inputs, regular mic inputs, so you didn't have a way to connect a quarter-inch jack like from an electric guitar, bass guitar, acoustic, or keyboard. Similar on stage, a lot of times it's the same way. When you're on stage, you have a stage snake with XLRs in it, you need a way to get the signal in. The other big reason is the impedance. Things that are passive in nature, like dynamic pickups, dynamic microphones, ribbon microphones, and passive guitar pickups, react to their impedance load a lot differently. So you need to match the levels correctly, which you can't going directly into a microphone preamp. Microphone preamp isn't designed to give the right kind of back pressure to a guitar, like an input of a guitar amp is. In comes the DI box. You plug into there, gives you the right kind of load you need, and then it transfers the signal from a guitar quarter-inch input, unbalanced, to a balanced XLR input. One of the great things about having it be a balanced output here is that it can go through a long distance. You start losing signal after about 10 feet. You start losing the high end, and a regular guitar signal degrades. You can go 300 feet on a regular balanced XLR with no issues. So there's a lot of really great reasons to use one of these. In a recording situation, the reason that you'd want to use one of these is so you can record a clean version of your signal and have it to do whatever you want with later, and we'll talk about that in our second video about reamping. But it's just great to have a signal that has not been altered by your amplifier or anything else. You plug your guitar into the input of this, and then it has an output here that goes into the mixer or recording interface or whatever, anything the mic preamp. And most have a few other buttons too, like most importantly, a ground left switch. And on the front, you typically have a through. You have an input and a through. Now, the input's where you plug your guitar in, and you plug it right into the mixer through the XLR, and you can record direct in, and it's just the almost like an electrical copy of the output of your guitar. There's nothing fancy to it. It sounds a little clunky and planky. Bass typically sound pretty good through a DI, but the idea of the through is that you can record through back to your amp. You in here, out through, goes right into your pedal board or amplifier or whatever your normal signal chain would be. You're just kind of inserting this in like it was a pedal. Now, what that allows you to do is you can record the DI signal at the same time as you record the signal from the amplifier, which is cool because you just record as normal, you get the sound from your amp, and it's just a normal recording session, but you have this DI signal in your DAW. In our next video, we're going to talk about what you can do with that signal and why you'd want to use it. So now we're going to go through an example of that. I'm going to play some guitar, I'm going to hook this up to my rig, and I'm going to show you exactly what I'm talking about. Hey everyone, okay. So now we're going to do the DI recording here and show you what it sounds like. We may be a little different than I talked about earlier in the video because we had to reshoot this screen capture part because I had some issues with the screen capture software. So for right now, I have my Les Paul plugged into the input of the DI box, the throughput of the DI box plugged into the input of a Marshall JCM800, and Marshall JCM800 entered into a cab and mic'd as normal. Now we have the ground switch enabled on the DI box right now, because we have that generic noise. If I unplug the ground lift, you hear a substantial raise in the noise force. Some amps are worse than others, the more gains worse than others. So you want to make sure your ground lift is enabled when you're using the through to an amp, because you only want it to ground through either the DI or the amp, one or the other. Okay, so we're going to go ahead. So I just want to hear the DI signal itself. So that's pretty, flat, uninspiring tone, but that's basically just exactly what it sounds like coming out of the guitar with no other processing, no amps, no anything in there. So that's great for what we want to do with it. Sometimes bass sounds pretty good like that, just DI, but most guitars don't. So we're going to go ahead and turn the amp on. And we're going to go ahead and hit record. Okay, so
that's basically it here. We're going to turn these both off. We had one track here with the input set to the microphone preamp that I had the DI box in, and then another one for a microphone in front of the cabinet. And just hit record on both tracks, and it'll record both at once. So we'll listen to just the DI box. Now, you can either get that using the DI box, or you can even plug in, if you have a DI input on your interface, you can plug in and get the same sort of thing there, and you can instantiate an amp modeler plug-in to record with and practice with, and then we can talk about what we can do with the DI in the next video about reamping. But I'm just going to show you what the amp just sounds like. And there you go. There you got a DI and an amp signal recorded into your DAW.
So the other thing you can do too is instead of having a DI box, a lot of interfaces, actually any consumer interface has a 1/4-inch input marked as a DI input on it, and you can record directly with that. You can plug directly in there. You just can't use it through to an amplifier at the same time. You'd have the recording just into your interface, which you can. We'll show you a little bit in the next video, but you can put it on a plugin that'll simulate an amplifier, like Bias FX, Guitar Rig, any of the various ones they have out there that you can use to get a decent sound while you're tracking. And then you still have the DI signal to do whatever you want with. You just don't have the capacity to record the amp at the same time. So I recommend getting a decent DI box because it typically sounds better. There's a lot, dedicated circuitry in them. The passive ones sometimes have really cool sounding transformers in them. They're just nice to have. But I think that's it for this video. We covered everything I think I wanted to, talking about a DI box and why you'd want to use one and how we use it. Just go ahead and subscribe to the channel, and make sure you watch the next video coming up that we're going to talk about. We're going to leave right from here and talk about what you're going to do with that signal once you have it.